Hello, Sunshine. I'm Alexi, Lalas, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This episode, we'll be talking, MLS Playoff preview, UCL roundup, the Condor, Barca blushes, my big mouth, Berhalter's big brain, U.S. Women's National Team red flags, and so much more. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mosse, how are you doing on this Wednesday, October 12th? And for those that do watch the pod, you will notice that we are in different places. I come to you from the great city of New York. I'm here on a little junket, as they say, a little press junket getting ready for the World Cup. But you are man in the fort back there at the studio. You look great, my friend. How you doing?
Doing well, yeah. A little bit lonely today, but we'll get through it. Why are you in New York?
So, we're getting down to it when it comes to the World Cup. And so myself and Rob Stone, Stu Holden, and some others, Jenny Taft, we're out here doing the rounds, doing some press for the World Cup, obviously to get people excited about what we think is going to be an incredible World Cup from a Fox perspective and what we're doing. So, we're doing what we do. We are, selling it. And it sells itself, to be quite honest with you, but they bring us in anyway. And it's always fun to come back here to New York, this city. I lived here many, many years ago. I lived in the city for a while. And then even before that, when I was playing for the then Metro Stars, I lived in Secaucus, right across the Hudson River over there. It's a great city. It has its ups and its downs, and it's good and its bads like everything else. But there is absolutely nothing like it. So we'll have a couple of nice days here and nights here. And I'm going to meet them out here in a little bit for dinner. And then we'll bring it back to LA before we gear up for Qatar. Have you watched anything or seen anything, my friend?
I am caught up on House of the Dragon. I have the newest episode of Andor waiting for me. I'm going to watch it tonight. And I've had two shows recommended to me that I'm going to start binging. One is Sherwood. It's a British crime drama that I've heard is phenomenal. And another is Gloria, which is a CIA Cold War spy thriller that my dad strongly recommended. And I've read some reviews, and they're very positive. So I'm going to watch both those shows.
Nice. All I have to offer is, my fare when I'm coming across the country. And oftentimes I will watch a movie, and I'll be honest, sometimes it's playing in the background. But one of my favorite movies of all time is 3 Days of the Condor, starring Robert Redford. Just a wonderful classic movie. Came out a long time ago. If you get a chance, check it out. And so I watched that yet again. I love it, and I will always watch it. It's like The Verdict with Paul Newman. It's one of those classics that I can't get enough of, even if I've seen it 100 times. So I watched that, and then I felt like, what? Obviously, with the news recently of the passing of the great Olivia Newton-John, I threw on Grease. Yeah, started tapping my foot, started singing a little bit, and put on Grease. So those were the two movies that I had going as I came across our beautiful land today. Ready to light this candle, my friend?
Let's do it.
Well, as I mentioned, with me traveling, there was all sorts of stuff that is going on. We're going to get to the Champions League stuff here in a second, but we're going to start it off because, let's be honest, we finally have the matchups. We know what is happening when it comes to Major League Soccer. We, from a Fox perspective, will be doing the games come Monday. From a ESPN perspective, they'll be doing games on the Sunday, and our friends over at Univision will be doing games on Saturday. So we are all loaded up with MLS games. How do you want to do this, Mosse? You just want to go through the matchups here and kind of give some thoughts?
Yes, and we'll begin with one that's near where you are right now. The Red Bulls playing host to Cincinnati in the Eastern Conference. That's the 4-5 matchup. The Red Bulls in the playoffs for the 13th straight season. That's now the longest active streak because Seattle's streak is over. While Cincinnati playing in their first ever playoff game. How do you see this one?
This is the one game where I pick the away team. And, maybe. But certainly this is the one that jumps out of the page because I think that Cincinnati, as we know, coming into it, firing on all cylinders, scoring goals, your friend Brenner and everything else. And believe me, we're going to talk much more about Cincinnati later on in the pod. But I think Cincinnati wins this by going into New York. And when I say New York, I mean New Jersey. And making sure that they don't change. And that could be a theme for a lot of these teams. You can't try to be something that you're not when the playoffs come along. And this is a Cincinnati team that doesn't get down when they let in goals, just keeps doing what they do, keeps scoring, doesn't try to get cute, doesn't try to play in a way that's not conducive to them being successful or a way that they haven't been successful through the year. Having said that, and you know, the New York Red Bulls, they are not a flashy team. They're not even a very exciting team. And they are certainly, for a team that is based in the New York metropolitan area, not a team that is flashy and sexy and one that commands your attention. As a matter of fact, a lot of people probably even follow the Red Bulls this year. That's on them. Not that they care, but that's on them. And so I think this is a really tight matchup, but I do have Cincinnati finding a way through but because there's something magical about it. I don't think that they get any farther, but I think this is the game that they go on the road and they find a way against the Red Bulls. What about you?
You mentioned Brenner. The Red Bulls have had an issue all season with lack of production from that center forward spot, but on decision day against Charlotte, young Elias Manuel bagged 2 goals. Be interesting to see if that gets him a start in this game, if the Red Bulls have uncovered something there, because you never know. This kid could emerge, and then all of a sudden they have somebody up there that can score goals. We'll see. But I tend to agree with you. If Cincinnati play even reasonably well defensively, guys like Cameron and Miazga back there, they've got a great chance to win this game because the firepower they have going forward with Acosta, Vasquez, and Brenner is as good as pretty much any team in these playoffs.
All right. You want to move on to something else?
Yes. The 4-5 game in the West, the LA Galaxy will play host to Nashville. Just the second time in the last 6 seasons the Galaxy are in the playoffs. How do you see this one?
So, I mean, we know that the Galaxy is kind of a tale of 2 halves of the season. And with, you know, the additions, Ricky obviously coming in, Puig, Granzier playing better, Brugman coming in, these types of additions, and then a talent that they already had. So it's, I guess, is this what the Galaxy really is? And of late, they absolutely have been. And so can they conjure that yet again? And from Nashville, we all know that it's Mukhtar. And so the LA Galaxy wins by, I think, just being what they are in this second half of the season and believing that they can do that. And Nashville wins, I think, by obviously Mukhtar having a big game. And I know it's a little simplistic to say you shut down Mukhtar and you shut down Nashville, but I mean, there's a reality behind it. And so what is Greg Vanney and company going to do to shut down Mukhtar? Keep in mind, Nashville was my preseason favorite to win MLS Cup. They would have to go into Los Angeles here and find a way past Los Angeles, which isn't by any stretch of the imagination beyond them, because when they do play well, and obviously it's relative to Mukhtar, but when they do play well, they're one of the great teams in the league.
Yeah, the Galaxy, they tend to control most games and create more chances than the opposition, but they can be very wasteful. So I think that's the key for them in these playoffs, putting away their chances. You mentioned they now have one of the best midfields in the league since the arrival of Puig and Brugman. And even Douglas Costa ended the season in pretty good form. So I don't think chance creation is going to be an issue for them. They just have to put it away. And yeah, you're right about Mukhtar. You know, you're right. It sounds simplistic to say, well, if he shows up, they might win. If he doesn't, they might lose. But I do kind of feel that way with this Nashville team. And there's a team coming up in our next game where it's kind of a similar dynamic, which is Austin and Sebastian Driussi. They host RSL. Austin, been an interesting team all season. RSL, we know in last year's playoffs had kind of a Cinderella run. So it'll be interesting to see if they can recapture that magic this time around.
Yeah, I mean, I think they are similar. I would still say that Nashville is more reliant on Mukhtar than Austin is reliant on Driussi. However, you know, this is where, you know, Pablo Mastroianni, and look, a lot of credit to what has happened with Austin over there, and Josh Wolf and Claudio Reyna, and obviously what they have going there. And, you know, they sold out the game, and they're going to be going crazy, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be beautiful to see this celebration. But then a whistle blows, and RSL is kind of been there, done that. And so there's that, even though RSL certainly has plenty of young and unexperienced players, they also got plenty of experience, including a coach that has been there. And I think that's where this game hinges on. Austin is going to rely on the fact that they are a very good team and have proven that through the year, but also kind of rely on that that magic and that aura and that atmosphere that they're going to create of just being excited to be in the playoffs. Well, that only gets you so far. And so the sooner that they can realize that just being in the playoffs and stop patting themselves on the back isn't enough, the better off it is for Austin. But I worry that if they run out of time, because RSL is going to know nobody gives a crap what happened in the regular season. We've been in the playoffs. We've won MLS Cup. We've been around. We are, for the most part, kind of OGs when it comes to Major League Soccer. That might be what tips the balances for RSL. But I still got Austin going through.
Montreal play host to Orlando. That's the 2-7 game in the East. On our last podcast, you did your MLS awards, but a brain fart, we neglected to do Coach of the Year. And the reason I bring it up leading into the Montreal game is because I suspect that might be your selection, right? Do you want to give it to us right now?
Yeah, I mean, so I went back and forth between Wilfried Nancy, who I think deserves a tremendous amount of credit and respect, and I think he's going to get a lot of votes. I think he'll probably win it. I think, and I forgot what I actually did, because I went back and forth between him and Jim Curtin, and there was a part of me, I think, at the last moment that said, you know what, we are taking Jim Curtin and this Philadelphia team for granted. So I think ultimately I still went with Jim Curtin, but I would have been absolutely no problem. And I might even, I just don't remember what I put in, but I might even have gone with Wilfried Nancy. And if he wins it, I am totally happy, and it's completely justified for what they have done. The interesting thing about this game is, part of their success, Montreal's success, has been their incredible record on the road. Obviously, they're coming back home against a team like Orlando that we mentioned last week, has not played well at home. Having said that, Orlando likes to muck it up. We were laughing last week about, the antics that is kind of ingrained in that culture down there on the sideline and just the way that this team plays. And so Montreal, I think Wilfried Nancy's going to have to impress upon this team that you have to find a way to use your home field advantage. And you have to find a way to not be diverted by any of the craziness that Orlando is going to try to do, because that's the only way that Orlando finds a way to win this game ultimately. And so I see Montreal going through. Orlando did not impress me, even though they got that win at the last day of the year to get them into the playoffs right now. I still think that they are a mediocre team going up against a great team that is Montreal.
I agree. I think this is the biggest mismatch in the first round in either conference. Mihailovic had some injury problems down the stretch, but looked pretty good on decision days. So looks like he might be all the way back, and that's big for Montreal, obviously. Next up, the 3-6 game in the East, NYCFC hosting Inter Miami. On our last podcast, I brought up the possibility of this game being played at Citi Field, and it was really just to tweak Mets fans because their team had just been knocked out of the baseball playoffs. And lo and behold, they did move the game. It looks like it is going to be at Citi Field instead of Red Bull Arena. Although the Miami owners aren't happy about it. Phil Neville was still expressing uncertainty about where exactly this game is going to be. Everything I'm reading is Citi Field. So unless I hear otherwise, yeah, I'm going to...
It's going to be Citi Field. They'll figure out a way. And I guess, I mean, it's not good, but I guess it's better. I mean, I don't know. At this point, I'm exhausted talking about NYCFC's facility problem right now. And they know it. I'm not telling them anything they don't know. And so if it's going to be at Citi Field, fine. When it comes down to the actual game, I don't know. I'd have to go and look what their record is there, because they played in so many different venues over the year and over the years. But when it comes to someone like NYCFC, I think that they are a better team than Miami. But with what Higuaín has done, I mean, we were talking about Driussi, and we were talking about, Puig and these types of players that either are new or have found a new a new vein. I think that Higuaín has to come up big here for this Inter Miami team. I'm still going to go with the defending champs NYCFC. They're certainly not as strong as they were last year, but I just think that they're stronger ultimately than Inter Miami.
Yeah, only 3 repeat champions in MLS history: DC United 96-97, Houston with Stu Holden 2006-2007, and the LA Galaxy 2011-2012 with Beckham, Donovan Keane, that great team. Early on this season, I thought NYCFC had a chance to repeat when they still had Ronnie Dyla on the bench and Castellanos up front. hasn't been the same team ever since those two guys left. I'm curious to see Thales Magno's status because he got injured on decision day. If he's available, I suspect he'll start up top. I don't love that. He was one of the best wingers in the league, and to me, since they moved him up top, he's been pretty mediocre. So they kind of weakened themselves at two positions with that move.
I agree with you. I don't get it. I love him out wide. I just, but obviously with Castellanos going down, they needed to figure out something.
So we'll see what happens there. And then the final first-round game, the 3-6 game in the West, Dallas hosting Minnesota. Minnesota, another one of those teams that has a dominant figure in Reynoso that you kind of feel like how he goes, so goes the team.
I mean, it's weird. It's weird with Minnesota because I think that they are good, but I think ultimately, and especially after this game, because I think Dallas is going to beat them, that they will look back on this season, even though they made the playoffs, as a failure, that they will look back and that they left a lot on the table. And it's not just Reynoso, but I think the expectations were much higher for the Loons here. And they are backing into the playoffs. I know they won on the weekend, but I don't think that this is not a confident team that I am looking at when it comes to Loons right now. And going to Dallas with Ferreira and Areola and company right now, not an easy place to play, so I'm going with Dallas there. So I have Dallas winning, I have NYCFC winning, I have Montreal winning, I have Austin winning. It's a close one. The LA Galaxy Nashville one, because I picked Nashville to win MLS Cup, I got to stay with Nashville coming into LA, and so I'm going to go with Nashville there, and I'm going to go with Cincy over Red Bull, going into Red Bull Arena and beating the Red Bulls. Any ones of those that you differ?
No, I'm with you on all of those. One World Cup subplot here. If Dallas were to lose this first-round game, then Jesus Ferreira, who we all think is the presumptive starting number 9 at the World Cup, would arrive at that first World Cup game having not played a competitive match in more than a month. Does that concern you?
Well, wait a second, Mosse. I'm told by everybody out there that, the poor players are just worked to the bone and they got too many games and they're overused and, they need rest. And Jurgen Klopp and everybody and their mothers telling me that they play too many games. So why isn't this good? He can get a nice little rest and then kind of come back in all rejuvenated and refreshed.
Perhaps. Anyway. And they are setting up that camp for MLS players who are inactive heading into the World Cup. So...
Exactly. All right. Anything else, my friend?
That is it.
As I mentioned, a bunch of MLS games coming up this weekend. 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, 2 on Monday. We'll be doing the ones on Monday. It's fun. There is a different type of atmosphere, and there is a different. I mean, you can feel it. There's just a different type of color, and there's a different type of feel to any playoffs, but certainly when it comes to what we're talking about here, MLS playoffs. And you have worked your entire season to be put in this position, and some are more advantageous than others, but we always talked about this kind of new lease on life coming. We'll see who has been able to take whatever good and positive they've done in the regular season and carry it over to the postseason. We'll also see some that maybe have been underwhelming, finding new life and kind of flipping a switch and being very, very different. It's part of what makes playoffs fun. It's part of what makes MLS playoffs fun. So check those out. All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. As I mentioned, lots of stuff going on when it comes to Champions League, and we'll give you a whole roundup of all the doings that happened. Okay, we're back. As I mentioned, lots of stuff going on when it comes to Champions League. I was around for yesterday's Champions League, but as I also mentioned, I was in the air for most of today, and we're recording here on Wednesday. So, Mosse, you're going to help me out with the Wednesday one. I was able to see the clips and get as much information as I possibly could. But let's start on Tuesday because all sorts of stuff happened. Where do you want to start?
Let's start early Tuesday. Maccabi Haifa, 2-0 winners over Juventus. American Josh Cohen started in goal for Maccabi Haifa. He got the shutout, made a couple of really nice saves. Juve in all sorts of trouble now. Looks like they're going to go out in the group stage. Di Maria limped off with a hamstring injury, so Argentinians are concerned about that for the World Cup. Weston McKennie started, came off at the half.
Yeah, it was not a good outing, obviously, for Juventus, not a good outing for Weston McKennie. He's kind of yo-yoing now when we see him at different times, which is not great, but he is playing. And keep in mind, he's spent a lot of this year coming off of those injuries, but you need him to kind of start coming into form, as they say. However, he's playing on a a mediocre Juventus team right now. And that's not to take anything away from what Maccabi Haifa did. Congratulations to them. It was comprehensive and it was well-deserved. And it's on the back also of, from an American perspective, Josh Cohen having a really, really good game, making the saves that he needed to, and making us proud in terms of the goalkeeping. Somebody asked me today on the flight over, somebody sent me a tweet saying, should Josh Cohen be considered for the national team? No, it's great and we can celebrate it and it's wonderful, but no, that's not the situation. Who knows? Maybe in the next cycle, because he's a goalkeeper, so his 30-year-old age doesn't really change anything, and that's not necessarily a problem. But no, that ship has sailed relative to the goalkeepers right now. And just because somebody had a wonderful performance in Champions League doesn't automatically mean that he needs to be brought into the national team a couple of weeks before the World Cup.
I read an article in an Italian newspaper, La Repubblica, which said that the Juve dressing room is divided right now. There's a pro-Allegri faction and an anti-Allegri faction. And they said Weston McKennie is one of the leaders of the anti-Allegri faction. And that shocked me because I think Allegri has been pretty good to him. Frankly, he's gotten more playing time this season than I think his form warranted. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, but Weston's a smart guy, and while he's young, he's been around enough to understand and calculate in this case, it would be the locker room dynamic. And it's a lot easier to fire a coach than it is to fire players when things aren't going well. And so I think he probably calculates, if this is true, this is all hearsay and this is all rumor, but this is kind of what happens. But if this were to be true, that Weston has feelings one way or the other, I would think that he would look at it and say, they're going to fire their coach because that's what happens. And I will still be here, but be careful what you wish for, because somebody that might come in, as you mentioned, that actually, whether you like him or not, doesn't have the same type of view that Allegri evidently has for Weston. And that might be that Allegri just says, this is the best that I got. And that in and of itself might be a problem. As much as I love Weston and as much as I love American players playing, that in and of itself, for what Juve is positioned to be and purported to be, might be the biggest problem.
Two teams clinched round of 16 berths on Tuesday. We'll begin with the defending champions, Real Madrid. This was classic Real. They were awful in this game against Shakhtar, which was played in Poland. Shakhtar obviously can't play at home. And Shakhtar deserved the 3 points, and yet Real Madrid snatched an equalizer. Last kick of the game, Toni Kroos floats across, Rudiger heads it in, and then has a nasty collision with the goalkeeper, which left him bloody and needing all sorts of stitches. And so Real Madrid get a 1-1 draw, quote-unquote, away to Shakhtar, and that's enough to send them to the round of 16. And I felt horrible for Shakhtar because FIFA did not do right by that team, allowing all the foreigners to leave, and they got no financial compensation for any of that. They had to put together this patchwork of a roster to compete in the Champions League. They're not even playing at home, and yet they've done much better than expected, and this would have been a nice moment if they had beaten Real Madrid, and they should have gotten the victory. They've got, by the way, a couple of wonderful players, this midfielder Sudakov and this winger Mudryk, who are both going to be like big signings for super clubs. They are absolute gems, these two young Ukrainian players. So, but yeah, when you take the whole situation into account, I was actually pretty annoyed that Real Madrid snatched that equalizer.
All right, hold on a second, Mosse. Hold on a second. I'm going to ask you to separate out some things to you, to my good friend, to people that are listening or watching. Separate out some things for those that watch the game. Mosse, you described the goal. Yes, I join everybody in congratulating Shakhtar on a well-earned point, and there were a lot of people that were cheering for Shakhtar, not because they necessarily don't like Real Madrid, although plenty because they don't, but because of the story behind it and, the troubles and, the behind the eight ball type of situation that they have been put in through no fault of their own. Having said that, Mosse, so now that separate that out, okay? The Rudiger goal, okay? We bend over backwards to protect goalkeepers. And God forbid you even look in the direction of a goalkeeper because you will get called for a foul, possibly a yellow card. This goalkeeper came out and was not even close to getting to the ball. Not only that, he could have really, really seriously hurt Rudiger. Now, look, he went off in blood, and the goalkeeper certainly took a hit himself. But this is a red card. This is not even a question. And I know the scenario and the situation, if we're going to err on the side, you're going to err on the side of Shakhtar. But come on, man. That was a ridiculously inappropriate and irresponsible way to come out for a ball. And I'm just knocking on wood that everybody is okay. And it seemed like in the moment that they were. But I wanted to get that in, because just because there is this romantic notion behind the game that I buy into and I'm fully supportive of, doesn't give you the excuse that you can go out and try to decapitate somebody on a cross ball that you never even came close. And just because you're a goalkeeper, you don't get dinged for it. Anyway.
No, that's fair. Our producer, Sean Sullivan, big NFL fan, very salty over some of these roughing the passer calls that occurred this past weekend. So hearing you talk about goalkeepers being overprotected, you kind of hit a nerve with him. So just...
But Mosse, bring back football. Bring back football. That's all I'm asking, okay? Where's football gone?
The other team that secured a knockout stage berth on Tuesday was Manchester City. They were away to Copenhagen, actually held to a 0-0 draw. Erling Haaland didn't play. He was rested. City had a goal controversially disallowed by Rodri early on, and then Mahrez missed a penalty, and they got a red card in the first half, Sergio Gomez, so they had to play down a man for a lot of the game. So when you factor in all that, 0-0 away from home wasn't that bad a result, and the point is enough to get them into the knockout stage. So City, they'll take that and go on their way.
But they didn't play Haaland. I mean, enough said, right? He fundamentally changes the way that they play and the fear factor of any team that you come up against. So it's not even, at this point, this is how impactful he has been. For me, it's not even a Manchester City game if Haaland's not playing. Which is crazy to say because of how important they have been and what they have done, over the last decade.
And the Rodrigo was disallowed because they spotted a handball on Mahrez in the buildup. Pep was asked afterwards, point blank, do you understand the handball rule? And he said, no idea. There's no consistency. He referenced the Arsenal-Liverpool game, the play with Jota and Gabriel. He referenced the Inter-Barcelona Champions League game the week before, the play with Denzel Dumfries in the box. And he's right. He said there's just no consistency from game to game, and nobody has any clue exactly what the handball rule is.
Well, he doesn't understand about the ball hitting the hand, or he doesn't understand about phase of play, or what's the deal? He didn't like the call because it went against him.
But you must admit, when we watch games, there's some are not given because supposedly the hand was close to the body, and then you watch another game later in the day and the same exact play, and it's given.
100%. But as long as it is subjective, okay, and it is murky, and it's done by design, then it's hard for people to argue because there is always another side, which is why I argue that at this point, it should just be, if it hits your arm or your hand, it's a foul. It's a handball. That's it. And we already have players playing with their arms behind the back. So let's just make that part of the modern game. And then we don't have to worry about it. And then what we're really arguing at that point over is, did it hit his arm and his hand? And there will be discussion about that. And there will be controversy about that, but it will be much clearer. And I think that's it's part of the problem from the outside. Inside, people will tell you they need to make it murky, if you will, to protect the game, to protect the referees, and to give you some wiggle room because not everything is black and white in this game. But anyway, Mosse, I'm okay. Pep understands what the rule is.
PSG Benfica 1-1 at the Parc des Princes. Benfica did very well the last 2 weeks to earn 1-1 draws in both games against PSG. They're now in great shape to advance from that group. This match occurring against the backdrop of the Mbappe news earlier in the day that he wants out of PSG in January. He regrets re-signing with them. He feels betrayed. From what I read, he wanted them to sell Neymar and sign Lewandowski. He does not want to play as a center forward. He felt like if you had Lewandowski up there and him and Messi floating behind him, he would get to showcase his all-around skills more. Instead, he's being forced to play as a center forward with Neymar and Messi floating behind him. And so he's talked about how he feels much more comfortable with France, where he has someone like a Benzema or Giroud up there and he can play off of him. So there's that. And just, I think, the general feeling that he didn't like the moves they made this summer and he doesn't think they're going to win the Champions League again this season. whatever the case, he's seemed very perturbed so far this season. And now, initially it was a Madrid newspaper, Marca, reporting this, so I kind of rolled my eyes and thought, okay, they're just trying to start trouble. But then the whole French media came in and said, no, yeah, it's true. He wants out in January, so now we'll have to see what happens with Mbappe.
Oh, that locker room must be so ridiculous. It just must be. It's the kind of thing that would just drive me up a wall. It's the kind of thing where you need somebody that is the voice of reason and the voice of authority. And I'm not talking about a coach. I'm talking about a player that at one point looks around and sees all of these terrific egos and undeniable world-class talents and does and says something to dramatically illustrate how you're screwing this up and it shouldn't happen and not on my watch. And if you got to pin them up against the wall, you pin them up against the wall and you say, that is not going to fly. I mean, and for Mbappe, I mean, this is kind of reserved for France, which is interesting. I'd much rather he just holds on to this type of childish behavior and waits until France, because this is usually the kind of drama and BS behind the scenes that happens when it comes to the French national team. That it's happened at PSG, fine, whatever. I mean, you created the half of the situation, by the way, and the power and the leverage that you wield in that locker room and for that team, you've brought to bear. And ultimately, whatever it is, the situation that you don't like right now, you had a hand in creating it.
The goals were both from the penalty spot. Mbappe scored for PSG. That goal, by the way, made him their all-time Champions League goal scorer. I know they don't have much of a history in that competition, but nevertheless, at his age, that's actually pretty impressive. And then João Mario equalized for Benfica. And by the way, there was somebody in the building that maybe could have set Mbappe straight. Jon Snow of Game of Thrones fame, Kit Harington, was at this game. So he could have pulled Mbappe aside afterwards and spoken to him. But so it finished 1-1 there. Chelsea go to the San Siro. They get a 2-0 win over AC Milan. This game was kind of wrecked early on by a really dubious decision. Tomori gets whistled for a red card and a penalty, which Jorginho converted. So AC Milan had to play down a man the rest of the way. It was pretty much one-way traffic. Aubameyang made it 2-0 before halftime, and Chelsea saw out the game after that. That red card did get Sergiño Dest in the game because Milan needed to straighten out their back line after having a defender sent off. Dest, I don't think, did anything overly impressive. Christian Pulisic, by the way, did not play. It's interesting. He didn't play match day 3 against AC Milan and started subsequent weekend against Wolves. Doesn't play in this game. If he starts against Aston Villa this upcoming weekend, then okay, clearly he's rotating between Champions League and Premier League, and Pulisic is at least in the Premier League 11, which is a step in the right direction relative to his situation under Tuchel. If Pulisic doesn't start this upcoming weekend, then we're kind of back where we were with Tuchel. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. But Chelsea get the 3 points here at the San Siro.
They might have to add another chapter to the book, I mean, and Dest, to your point, he actually was in at a certain point, and he had a shot, a point-blank shot, and he skied it over, and so it's not going well for Dest, but at least he's on the field as opposed to Christian Pulisic. So yeah, this weekend will be interesting to see if he goes back to the well or the Pulisic well.
Dortmund Sevilla finished 1-1. Jude Bellingham scored again for Dortmund. He scored
Amazing.
in all 4 match days. Boy, the U.S., they're going to have their hands full with that guy November 25th, huh?
Bring it on, Mosse. Bring it on. I mean, his value just keeps going through the roof, and rightfully so. Incredibly talented player, young players, so that value is going to be increased. And he, as we said, took the road less traveled and has made all the difference.
Declan Rice and Bellingham versus Adams and Mosse. That's a pretty tasty midfield joust there, huh?
Bring it on.
Gio Reyna did not start this game, but he was available, came on in the second half, and had an incredible move late that's gone viral that U.S. soccer fans are all drooling over. So good to see Gio have a moment like that.
I mean, Gio coming on and playing well and having viral moments, that's what he does, right? I mean, nobody's denying that he's a great talent. It's just actually being on the field. And so I'm happy that he's on the field. Are you counting on that happening and continuing? I don't know. We've gotten our hopes up before. And so let's hope again. I think Dortmund actually has done right by him in the way that they have kind of brought him along slowly. And yeah, they're in their luxurious position to kind of do that. But it's great. Yeah. But I'm not going to go crazy unless we get multiple games where he is good. And God forbid, I'm knocking on every bit of wood or formica that I have here in my hotel room, that nothing happens to him beforehand, let alone when he gets on the field, because that can happen too.
And then last thing on Tuesday, Cameron Carter-Vickers captained Celtic in their 2-0 home defeat to Leipzig. First American to captain a team in the Champions League, so pretty nice milestone for him.
It's nice. It's nice. But they lost, right? 2-0?
They lost, yes.
Okay.
All right, now we head to Wednesday, and we got to hit on what was one of the great group stage games in recent Champions League history. Barcelona versus Inter Milan. It finished 3-3 at Camp Nou. Barca were up 1-0 at the break, playing well. Ousmane Dembele with the goal. The crowd was into it. You felt like they were in pretty good shape. And then Inter turned it around in the second half with Barella and Lautaro Martinez. At that point, 2-1 down. Barca were going out of the Champions League. Lewandowski equalized 2-2. Then Inter score again late, 3-2 with Gosens. So again, Barcelona looking like they're going to go out of the Champions League. But Lewandowski with a wonderful header. So it finished 3-3. Barcelona's still alive, but they're in a lot of trouble. They're 3 points back of Inter, and Inter have the head-to-head tiebreaker. So it's still looking to me like Barcelona are going to go out in the group stage for the second consecutive campaign.
So Barcelona would have to win out and get some help from others.
Yeah, they need to gain 4 more points than Inter across the last 2 match days.
Yeah. But the Lewandowski goal was incredible. And look, this is good for Barcelona. I guess it's good for Champions League, but you got to figure out a way to do it. And Lewandowski not being in Champions League this early, it's not good. But he's not playing for a great Barcelona team. So, oh my goodness. All right, well, congratulations to Inter. That's a big point, and they probably should have 3.
Yeah. And they've had all sorts of Champions League group stage struggles in recent years. So getting out of this group that had Bayern and Barcelona in it would be a really nice achievement for Simone Inzaghi, who got himself sent off late in this one. Bayern, by the way, 4-2 winners away to Plizen, and they advanced to the round of 16. Also on Wednesday, a couple of other teams punched their ticket. Club Brugge, we've talked about being kind of the Cinderella team in this season's Champions League. They go to Spain. They get a 0-0 draw away to Atletico Madrid. Brugge have still not conceded in this group stage through 4 match days, and this result enough to get them into the next round.
I didn't see that game. So
Napoli, 4-2 winners at home against Ajax. They continue to roll. Chucky Lozano scored in this one. Raspadori, Varaskelia, Osimhen with the final goal. They've scored 17 goals in their 4 games, 4 wins out of 4. They punched their ticket to the knockout stage. They are looking like a real threat. Not only are they off to the knockout stage, but they could make some real noise in the next round.
And they evidently do not like Ajax at all. Man, oh man. They crushed them both games. Woo.
By the way, we talk about U.S. players, so we got to be equal opportunity here. 3 Mexicans started this game. Jorge Sanchez, Edson Alvarez, and Chucky Lozano. So on Twitter, Mexicans were very proud of that, flexing their muscles. So Tottenham, 3-2 winners over Eintracht Frankfurt. They actually fell behind 1-0 and then scored 3 unanswered. Son scoring twice. Kane bagged 1. Frankfurt pulled 1 back late, but Tottenham hold on, so a nice win for them. And then Liverpool, how about this one?
Jeez.
They concede first and then score 7 unanswered to win 7-1 away to Rangers. Salah with a hat trick. Firmino scored twice. So, Liverpool needed kind of a flex the muscles result like this. It's against Rangers, so don't want to read too much into it. But nevertheless, Liverpool, they've mostly been bad this season, but when they've been good, they had a 9-0 win over Bournemouth in the Premier League, 7-1 victory here. Man,
Rangers, be careful. Do not poke that red bear. Holy cow. They just said, all right, that's enough. We're going to rattle off 7 in a row here. But to your point, Liverpool needs some good news and needs a feel-good type of moment. We'll see if it carries over to the weekend.
All right, so that's it for the Champions League. We are now through 4 match days, just 2 more to go.
All right. What else? We got some stuff coming up this weekend we want to talk about?
Yes, some European games to look forward to, and we got to begin in Spain. Real Madrid host Barcelona. Those 2 teams level on points atop La Liga. Both have 7 wins and 1 draw. Lewandowski versus Benzema. We've talked about how this game lost a little bit of juice last season. Do you think it's regained some of it back with Lewandowski joining Barcelona? And how excited are you for this one?
I mean, because it's all relative, isn't it? What we're comparing it to is Messi era and Ronaldo era, right? And so nothing is even come close to living up to that yet, which is it's a bigger conversation, but at some point that needs to be changed. And who knows, with Haaland and these types of players coming through, that it might be restored at a certain point. But no, I don't think that it is regained any of its luster relative to the heydays that we're talking about. And I'm talking about the contemporary heyday, right, of Messi and Ronaldo. Sure. Having said that, to your point, both teams didn't look impressive midweek, but both teams are sitting at the top of the table. And so this is something that we have seen for years and years and years. It makes it interesting. It makes it a game that I will tune into because of the history involved and because of the pedigree of both of these teams, even if they're not at their height relative to what they have been in the past.
In France, PSG will play host to Marseille. Even though PSG have this air of being above everyone else in Ligue 1, Marseille is the one opponent that gets under their skin, that they get up for. Marseille like to hold it over them, that they've won the Champions League and PSG hasn't. Marseille won the very first edition back in 1993, beating AC Milan in the final in Munich. And obviously PSG, despite all their spending, have yet to win that competition. So these games tend to be very ill-tempered. There's only 3 points separating them in the table. Alexis Sanchez joined Marseille this season. He's playing well, so you've got him, Dimitri Payet. And then obviously we'll see about Messi's fitness. He's missed the last couple of games. And Mbappe's mental state. We'll see where this story goes the next few days regarding him and PSG. So a lot to look forward to in this one.
But the difference between this, Mosse, and what we just talked about with Real Madrid and Barca is that when we talk about Real Madrid and Barca, I don't think either of them look at the other as any better, right? And so the disparity between a PSG and Marseille, Liga does not have that yet. This is much more of a younger brotherish type of thing where he's going to give you a fight and he's going to be a pain in the ass. And at times he's going to strut around and believe that he's bigger than he actually is. And sometimes give you a bloody nose. But the reality is that you're still the older brother and you can still beat up on them when it comes to that, as opposed. And I think it's another bigger type of conversation, but it's what Ligue 1 is missing right now, as far as I'm concerned with these types of games. But, from a point perspective, we've seen it happen in the past. And this weekend, you can move level.
In England, Liverpool will host Manchester City. I said this on our last podcast. I'll reiterate. If Liverpool lose this game, they're out of the title race. They would be 16 points back of Manchester City. Haaland, we just talked about.
Mosse, it's October 12th.
But, I could see Arsenal imploding. I can't see City imploding to that degree. So you fall 16 points behind City at any point this season.
So
you're not.
What the hell are we talking about here when it comes to leagues then? Oh, my God. You're going to get me started here. On October 12th of a league, that's over. It's done. It's decided. All right. Fine. It's a great system and structure we got going there.
Are we talking?
Right. Well, who do you got then?
Are we talking Premier League playoffs here? Is that where you want to go here?
No, well, I'm just saying that don't you think that fundamentally that's a problem? Maybe it's not. Whatever.
Don't give Todd Bowley any ideas, huh? But
all right. Okay.
Erling Haaland, we just talked about, he sat out the Champions League game, so he'll be rested going up against that Liverpool back line, which has been a mess this season. So this is a real pride game for Liverpool, gut check game. They got to step up here at home, Anfield. They are unbeaten in the last 4 against City, if you include that Community Shield. Remember, they've already had a meeting this season in the Community Shield. Liverpool won 3-1. That was a game where Nunez scored while Haaland missed a couple of chances, and it triggered this narrative that, he might struggle. I don't know, coming from the Bundesliga to English football. It's
things have changed a little bit since then, Mosse.
Yeah, those struggles have not materialized. Yes. The other Premier League game we want to highlight, Leeds United will host Arsenal. As we know, Arsenal are flying, 8 wins in 9 games, atop the table. Jesus, Martinelli, Saka and company all flying. Can Jesse Marsch devise a game plan to slow down this team?
Well, look, we've already seen now Arsenal come up against what people thought was going to be a true test and pass with flying colors. So if Jesse Marsch ends up being the one that cracks this nut, that would be a huge, huge feather in his cap. Having said that, when it comes to Leeds, what we've now seen is that they start out strong, but they don't have the gas to sustain. And they're coming up against a very, very good team. Anything that Leeds gets out of this game, I think, is great for Leeds and for Jesse Marsch. If they were able to conspire to find a way against, right now, arguably the best team in England, man, oh man, that would be wonderful. But I don't see it happening.
2 more games and then we're done. In Italy, Lazio hosts Udinese. That's 3rd versus 4th. We talk so much about Roma with Mourinho and Dybala, but Lazio, the other capital club, are actually above them in the table. They're just 3 points behind leaders Napoli. So Maurizio Sarri doing a good job there. Lazio have won their last 3 Serie A games 4-0. First team in Serie A history to have 3 straight 4-0 victories.
In history, huh?
Yeah,
wow.
They've got a lot of firepower with Luis Alberto, Milinkovic-Savic in the midfield, Immobile up top, guys like Felipe Anderson, Pedro on the wing. So I like this Lazio team, and we'll see what they can do against Udinese. And then good one in Germany, Union Berlin will host Borussia Dortmund. Union Berlin atop the table, Jordan Pifak. Dortmund, I would assume Gio Reyna would be available, perhaps maybe start. He looked pretty good.
Maybe I was just about to say. I mean, this is at some point you kind of have to say, all right, you can fly. Woof. I would love to see that. I mean, like I said, at some point we just got to find out, as opposed to constantly protecting him, you got to get him out there going. And if it's always, well, he could get hurt, then he's not going to be of any use. So I don't know. I'd like to see him start, but we'll see. PFOC.
That's it.
All right, my friend. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, oh yeah, it's time for Ask Alexi. All right, welcome back. It's time for Ask Alexi, that point in the show where you send in some questions, and we talk about the hashtag that you can use on all the social media platforms out there, and our Twitter handle is SOTU with Alexi, and of course, the now famous State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297, 657-549-2297. And a lot of people are really enjoying the hotline. And we try to use the questions that we do. There's a whole lot that we don't. Don't think that we don't love you. Don't think that we're not thankful that you are sending them in. There's only so many that we can use. And I think, Mosse, we've opted to go for State of the Union podcast hotline questions again this week, right?
Yep. Let's go with the first one right now.
Hi, this is Oscar from Wisconsin, and my question is, which strikers do you think should go to Qatar, and which strikers do you think Berhalter will end up taking to Qatar? Thanks. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you, Oscar from Wisconsin. And I guess this would be a good point, Mosse, for us to plug our positional preview pods that we have coming up. So definitely look for those, where we kind of get in depth when it comes to the U.S. men's national team and the potential players that each position has. And there's plenty of debate, and this is a good thing, right? Okay, so when it comes to the striker position, which is a constant source of debate, I would think that when it comes right now, this is where I think Gregg Berhalter's head is, and it could change, but it looks like and sounds like that he's going to bring 3. Okay, I would bring 4, but he looks like he is going to bring 3, and I think ultimately those are going to be Jesus Ferreira as the incumbent, and then it's going to be Sargent and Pepe. So the 3 players that we saw in camp before. I would add, at this point, PFOC. I've talked about Brandon Vasquez, and who knows, he might really impress in this mini camp that they have coming up. But since he has not been with the team, I think that from a Gregg Berhalter perspective, will exclude him. And I do believe and kind of share the opinion that if it is a toss-up, go with the ones that have been in the dynamic and been in that environment that you have. And so that's why PFOC for me would be over Brandon Vasquez, especially since he didn't bring him in this last window. So I think those are the 3 that he's going with. The 4 that I would go would be those 3 plus PFOC. And it irks me because I think had we seen Brendan Vasquez, that he would have taken the place of, let's say, a Pepe or a Sargent when it comes to those spots. Because if you just gave me, I could only take 3, I think I'm going Ferreira, Pefok, and Pepe and Sargent. Between Pepe and Sargent, I think I'm going with Sargent over Pepe. So Pepe's the odd man out. Mosse, what about you?
I agree. If you have to replace one of the 3 that he called up in the last window with Pefok, for me it would be Pepe that would drop out. I know he's doing well at club level, but I just don't hold the Eredivisie in high regard, and I know what I've seen from him with the national team lately. So, yeah, I think Pefok would be a more useful player to have in Qatar than Pepe.
Okay. All right. Like I said, we'll be doing a bunch of this, deep dive into the positions here coming up with our positional preview pods that we have. What's the next one that we got, Mosse?
All right, let's hear another voicemail.
Hi, Alexi. This is Pedro from Queens, New York. I wanted to ask you, do you think that Berhalter has lost the confidence in his players? It just seems like due to the recent cycle, his failure to bring in the best striker that we have available in Pefok, then starting long 2 games in a row after the horrible performance against Japan, playing players out of their position, whether it's Dest or Pulisic. It just seems like if I were one of the players, I would have lost total confidence in him and his inability to adjust. And he's always a guy in the system, and it seems like the players are frustrated. And Berhalter isn't someone also who has a long history of winning. I mean, and I think he had coached in the Swedish league, and I think he got fired after less than a year. And even in MLS, I think that with the crew, they made the playoffs a couple years, but other than that, he never won MLS Cup. So it just seems to me if I was one of the players, I would have lost confidence at this point in him. So let me know what you think. Appreciate it. Thank you for the podcast. It's a great listen.
All right, Pedro from Queens. You're right around the corner here. I'm right here in Manhattan. Good question. Thank you. Has he lost the team? Well, obviously I'm not inside, so I don't know. I would venture to say, because every team has this, there are players that like him, and there are players that, I don't know, maybe players just don't like him, but I think there were certainly players that maybe don't, he's not their cup of tea. And not necessarily that they don't like him. And there's certainly maybe players that don't like it. But when it comes to, that dynamic exists in anything. When it comes to whether he has lost this team, I don't think so. I think that players, you all go back to your hotels, you're in the bus or whatever, and you commiserate amongst yourselves. And why the hell did he do that? And why the hell did he do that? And it's not a coach's responsibility to explain every single move that he or she makes to every single player on the team. However, you got to have your finger on the pulse if you are Gregg Berhalter and understand the dynamic. You're dealing with egos. You're dealing with incredibly talented, but at times fragile. Also with this team, you're also dealing with very young and inexperienced players. And so you have to factor all of that into all of your actions and all of your words. All of that is to say, no, I don't think that he has lost this team, in that I don't think that there is a toxic environment that has been created relative to decisions that have been made over the cycle or even the last couple of games in the window. That's not to say, like I said, that can't be created and can't be created very quickly. A lot of that comes down to results. When he puts Sergiño Dest in left back position, that's not messing Sergiño Dest up, because he's saying to Sergiño, look, you're our second best left back that we have. And with Jedi out, I need to figure out and give you some opportunity to play in that position. So basically what you're saying is, no matter what, you're going to be on the field as a starter. No player is going to look at that and go, oh, I can't believe you're not playing me over at right back. That's my impression of Sergiño Dest being grumpy about something. So I don't think that necessarily is a problem. So when you see players, quote unquote, playing out of position, and I don't think we see a lot of that, to be quite honest with you, when it comes to this national team going forward. But if and when it's done, I don't think it's not a situation like where Christian Pulisic for Chelsea was going in at right back And that can cause problems for the player and the dynamic that's going on in the locker room right now. Having said all of that, this is why I say only one cycle, because I think it gets stale and I think it gets old very, very quickly through no fault necessarily of coaches, just the reality of what a cycle is, especially these young players. If you had interviewed them on the first day that Gregg Berhalter took charge and then interview them on the last day of the World Cup in December, think of how different they are as human beings, as players. Their personalities have changed. Physically, they have changed. They are different people. And what worked at the beginning of the cycle or even in the middle of the cycle might not work now in terms of the group dynamic or the individuals that you are dealing with. And that's why I think it's just so hard. And it'll be really interesting, regardless of what happens to Gregg Berhalter, if the Federation opts to continue with him after this World Cup. Mosse?
All right. One more voicemail to go.
Okay.
Hey, Alexi. Hey, Mosse. This is Jared Smith from Salt Lake City, formerly from Cincinnati. I just wanted to get your thoughts on an audio clip from earlier in the summer off of my favorite podcast. Here you go.
Congratulations over there to the Cincinnati folks for what they are doing. But, again, it's been so bad for so many years. Make the playoffs, and then we'll do a whole segment on Cincinnati. How about that?
So just wanted to know when the full segment on Cincinnati was coming. Looking forward to your coverage of the playoffs and the World Cup. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. That is awesome. Thank you so much, Jared Smith from Cincinnati. Well, now in Salt Lake, but originally from Cincinnati. And so I'm assuming a FC Cincinnati fan and stan. And you're bringing the receipts. So I love it. And you're absolutely right. So congratulations to you, to all of the Cincinnati fans, and most importantly, to this team for what it has done. And you have, you deserve the praise that you are getting. I think if you've listened earlier on, Jared, to the podcast here, you will see that I actually picked Cincinnati. That's how bullish I am about this team right now. A lot of credit obviously goes to the the front office for once again making changes, but in this case obviously getting it right. And let's be honest, they haven't gotten it right. And so whether it's Noonan coming in as the coach, Pat Noonan coming in as the coach, or Chris Albright coming in behind the scenes, everything that they have touched this year has turned to I guess gold, but at the very least it's just better. And let's be honest, much better in terms of the product that they are putting on the field, the results that they are getting, and the way that people outside of Cincinnati are now looking at this team. And I'm happy. I'm happy for the city. It probably makes you also very happy that relative to your friends up north there in Columbus, that you are not only more successful, but you are also in the playoffs and you get that opportunity. We'll see if you kick on next year. I hope that you do. I think that you are, when I say I mean Cincinnati, you are making the league better. And I don't think you would blame me or anybody at that point when you recorded that and threw it back at me, which I love that you did. I don't think that you would or anybody would look at that and think that I was out of bounds for saying, hey, let's wait and see. And then we will give you the praise that you deserved, because it's one thing to have a period of the year or just a good type of season within a season. It's another thing to be able to do it on a consistent basis. And Cincinnati has not only been better, but they've been better than a lot of teams and certainly better than themselves throughout the course of the regular season, and it's well deserved. And I hope it goes well against the New York Red Bulls. But even if it doesn't, this has been not just a success, but a rousing success when it comes to what you have done in the past. And so, from me to you, congratulations. You have my utmost attention and respect, FC Cincinnati, for what you have done. And it has gone swimmingly on and off the field, because that environment that you've created also, and I've been there, is pretty special too. So now you got something on the field in terms of a product to be very, very proud of. And you couldn't say that in the last few years. All right. Anything else, Mosse? All right. Thank you to Jared. And like I said, bringing in clips from the past. Awesome. Thank you to Pedro from Queens and Oscar from Wisconsin. And thank you to everybody for all the messages that you are sending in. Again, if you want to be on the State of the Union podcast with one of your questions, comments, concerns out there, don't hesitate to call the State of the Union podcast hotline, 657-549-2297, or you can send it in on all the different platforms that we have when it comes to social media using that hashtag Ask Alexi. And remember that our handle there is SOTU with Alexi. All right, we'll come to the end of the show. And when I come back around here in the corner after we take a break, I will give you my one for the road as I usually do. Don't go anywhere. All right, welcome back. It is the end of yet another show. I think another successful show, Mosse. I don't know about you, but at the end of each and every show, I give you my one for the road. Mosse, did you know that I am scheduled to take another trip? I know I'm coming to you from New York for this pod, but I'm scheduled to take another trip next week. Do you know where I'm going?
Might it be New Zealand?
Amazing that you were able to come up with that. I am leaving Monday from Los Angeles, and I am arriving Wednesday in Auckland, New Zealand. You know what is taking place in Auckland, New Zealand, Mosse?
The Women's World Cup draw.
Exactly. For those that don't know, and you should know, the 2023 Women's World Cup will be taking place joint hosting with Australia and New Zealand. The draw is happening next Friday. Yours truly will be getting on a plane, and I will be involved in the draw. I have been given the incredible responsibility and honor of being part of the draw, the Women's World Cup draw next Friday in Auckland. Now, I'm excited about that, but I'm also excited about the World Cup next summer because our women's national team, number one in the world, and two-time consecutive winners of the World Cup are going for 3 in a row, a three-peat. And, you know, we expect our women, whenever they take the field, to beat whoever it is, regardless of the circumstances. Well, certainly over the last week, we have seen that our women's national team is mortal, that they can be beaten, and they got beaten twice. Once in England against mighty England, and England is coming on strong as the champions of Europe, 2-1. And then they followed it up with a less than convincing, and certainly it was a loss to Spain. And, you know, a lot of consternation, as is to be expected when the U.S. loses, because first off, we rarely face people that are on our level, and we rarely lose, even when we do face people on teams on our level. And so this was not a good, let's call it a window. This was not a good window for Vlatko Andonovski and this U.S. women's national team. Now, is it sirens going off right now because of what is going on with this U.S. women's national team? I don't think so. And keep in mind, before both of the last World Cups, the United States women have gotten punched in the nose and then gone on to win World Cups. I think there's a lot of us that are looking at this as a timely and necessary type of lesson learned, punch in the nose that will remind Vlatko and this entire team that they still need to put in the work, and the rest of the world continues to catch up. Now, are there problems with this team that are fixable? Sure. Is it going to look very different than the last World Cups? Absolutely. We all understand that there is a generation that has come and gone, and there are players that still aren't involved right now. And whether it's a Julie Ertz, who I think we're finding out how important she was to the women's national team, or whether it's just Father Time and a Becky Sauerbrunn, who we saw not play some of these games in this recent window. Whether it's who's going to be starting up there in that 9 position with Katarina Macario hurt and Alex Morgan, who wasn't involved in this window. Is there going to be that next generation that has grown up watching these incredible legends that are going to take that mantle and are going to live up to the responsibility and, let's be honest, live up to that pressure? I still think that this team can win a World Cup. It'll probably be done in a very different way. But keep in mind that we as soccer fans, we often scream and yell about, hey, they're getting long in the tooth, and hey, it's a young person's game, and hey, why aren't you playing the kids, and hey, there's all this talent coming along, and why don't you give them a chance? And then when we actually see it done, which is basically what we have seen done over the last couple of years from Vlatko Andonovski, we scream and yell when it doesn't produce the results. The only time ultimately that it matters is going to be next summer when the U.S. women's national team takes the field. And the lessons that will have been learned, either by the players or by Vlatko Andonovski, by these types of games that are being played, while in essence you're losing the battle, but ultimately you win the war. That's what's important. And I know it's frustrating. It's frustrating for me at times because I want to win every game and I want to see the best players. And I don't have patience. Like a lot of fans, we don't have patience for development. We don't have patience to see players grow. We don't have patience for their mistakes, especially at the highest level when it comes to the international level for a team in particular, like the U.S. women's national team, that we are used to just seeing them obliterate everyone and do it with style. Now, all that being said, I can't wait for next summer. There are teams that are going to be gunning for us, and this is a good thing. Having a better England, as much as I may make fun of them, is a good thing. This is a good thing for women's soccer. This is a good thing for soccer, and it's a good thing for the U.S. women's national team. So when I think about the U.S. women's national team right now, I still am incredibly bullish. I'm still incredibly excited about the talent that they have, about the talent even over the next 9 months that is going to be given opportunities and may star in the World Cup next summer. It might not look like the World Cup team that we have seen win World Cups over the last 2 World Cups, but it's still going to be American. It's still going to be talented, and I believe it can beat regardless of what is thrown at us from a European perspective or a worldwide perspective. But they're coming, and it's a good thing. So fear not, all right? Let not your heart be troubled, all right? It's not that there aren't problems. It's not that there aren't challenges, but the sky is certainly not falling when it comes to the U.S. women's national team, and it's still deserved of being called the best in the world. And next summer, they'll get another chance to prove it. Mosse, anything before we go?
That's it.
All right. Listen, I appreciate everybody and your patience, and I appreciate you letting me come to you from the road here in New York. As I mentioned, I'll be here for a few more days, then I'll be back, and we'll be with you next week before I head off to Auckland, New Zealand. And so that should be interesting, and we'll have plenty of stories to tell. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in, for subscribing, for reviewing, for rating, for doing all the different things that you do. As I mentioned in the previous pod, it's going great, and we could not be more thrilled and happy and appreciative of everybody that is being part of this State of the Union podcast family that we have there. And each and every week, we just seem to get more and more people that are coming to it. I recognize that mostly it's for Mosse, but I'm going to be along for the ride here. I'm going to ride Mosse's coattails. We'll see you again, and we'll talk to you again next week on the State of the Union podcast. And until that time, size the day.